Before we begin today, I want you to take one slow breath with me, because what you are about to hear changed the way I think about every single morning I wake up. This is not a motivational speech. This is not a list of tips. What this is a deep, honest, research-backed conversation about something most of us are only handed when it is already almost too late. Stay with me. Every word of this matters. A researcher sat down with a 104-year-old man in Okinawa, Japan, and asked him one question. "What is your reason to live?" The old man smiled. He did not mention his achievements. He did not mention his wealth. He said 3 words. And those 3 words, it turns out, are backed by more scientific evidence for a long life than anything your doctor has ever told you. Today we are going to find out what they are, and why almost nobody learns this until it is far too late. There is a small island sitting in the southernmost corner of Japan. Its name is Okinawa, and for decades, researchers from around the world, from Harvard, from the National Institute on Aging, from universities across Europe, they kept noticing something about this island that simply made no sense by modern medical standards. The people there would not die, not at the usual age anyway. Let that land. Wow, we are not talking about 1 or 2 exceptional individuals. We are talking about an entire population. In Okinawa, there are more than 24 people over the age of 100 for every 100,000 inhabitants, far more than the global average. These are not people hooked up to machines. These are grandmothers dancing, grandfathers tending their gardens, people in their 90s who still have a reason to laugh before noon. So what were they doing? Researchers flew in. They studied everything: the food, the air, the water, the genes. And one by one, the simple, obvious explanations began to fall apart. Because here is the thing about genes. The Danish twin study established that only about 20% of how long the average person lives is dictated by our genes. The other 80% is dictated by our lifestyle. 80%. That means the life you are living right now, the choices you are making, the relationships you are keeping, the way you move through your days, those things carry 4 times more power over your lifespan than anything written in your DNA. Soft laugh. 4 times. I had to sit with that for a while. And when the researchers finally identified the common thread running through every long-lived community on Earth, whether it was Okinawa in Japan, or the sun-warmed hills of Sardinia in Italy, or the coastal villages of Nicoya in Costa Rica, or the Greek island of Icaria, or even a quiet Adventist community tucked in Loma Linda, California, when they finally found the one thing these places shared above everything else, it was not a diet. It was not a supplement. It was not a gym membership or a morning routine or a cold shower at 5 in the morning. It was purpose, a reason to get up. The Japanese have a word for it. It is one of the most beautiful words I have ever encountered. The word is. It translates most simply as the reason. 2 live researchers who study why the inhabitants of Okinawa live longer than people almost anywhere else in the world believe that one of the central keys, alongside a clean diet, time outdoors, and green tea, is the ikigai that shapes their everyday lives. Now think about that. Not wealth, not surgery, not technology. Purpose studies have found that people who carry a strong sense of purpose have a measurably lower risk of cardiovascular disease and lower overall mortality rates. Your heart literally beats longer when you know why you are alive. Let me say that one more time, because I do not want you to miss it. Your heart beats longer when you know why you are alive. Now let us go somewhere else. Let us go to the United States. Because what the researchers from the Blue Zones Project discovered inside a Seventh-day Adventist community in Loma Linda, California, confirmed everything the Japanese island had been quietly showing the world. The residents of this community followed a plant-based diet, maintained regular physical activity, and connected deeply through their faith. They also strictly observed a weekly day of Sabbath, a day of complete rest, which carried profound restorative benefits for both body and mind. And the researchers noticed something remarkable. There was a much lower incidence of dementia and depression among older people in these communities compared with the worldwide population. To some extent, that is because of a low-stress lifestyle. Stress, we talk about it casually. Oh, I am stressed. We almost wear it as a badge now, but stress is not a badge. Stress, chronic and unmanaged, is one of the quietest killers that medicine has ever documented. And what these communities had built, not through luck, but through culture, through rhythm, through faith, was a life that did not allow stress to take root the way it does in most of the modern world. The Adventists in Loma Linda were not exceptional because they followed a rigid program. They were exceptional because they had built a life with a CENTREA life rooted in something larger than themselves. And this brings me to a man named Dan Buettner. He is a National Geographic Fellow, an explorer, an award-winning journalist, and for more than 2 decades he has done what very few researchers have had the patience or the funding to do. He went to every place on Earth where people live the longest. He sat with them, he ate with them, he walked with their families, and he asked them to teach him everything. What he discovered, and what he calls the Power Nine, are the 9 common threads woven through every long-lived culture on Earth. And at the very heart of all 9 is a simple, almost ancient idea. In every blue zone community, regardless of location, the foundation underlying all behavior is how people connect with one another. Isolation, not competition, not the relentless accumulation of things that cannot love you back. Connection. In Okinawa, children as young as 5 are placed into committed social networks called MOAI, lifelong friendship groups that provide financial and emotional support in times of need, giving each member the deep security of knowing that someone will always show up for them. One particular MOAI that researchers discovered had been together for 97 years. The average age of that group was 102. 97 years they had been friends for 97 years. And when one of them did not appear, the others would put on their best clothes and walk across the village to find them. That is not a social media following. That is not a contact list. That is community in its purest, oldest, most human form. Now, I have to stop here and talk to you directly, because I know someone watching this right now is lonely, not in the dramatic, obvious way, but in that quiet, every evening way, where the house gets too still and the thoughts get too loud, where you are surrounded by people at work or at family gatherings, but something deeper is missing. If that is you, this is for you today. The research is not theoretical. It is not abstract. It is sitting in the data from 85 years of the Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies of human happiness in history, and it is saying, clearly and without apology, that the quality of your relationships is the single greatest predictor of how long and how well you will live. Not your cholesterol, not your waistline, not the supplements stacked on your bathroom shelf, the depth of your connections. Before we go further, if this is speaking to something in you, please take 5 seconds right now. Subscribe to Legacy Lantern, hit the bell, because everything we bring to this channel is researched, it is real, and it is built for people like you. People who are not satisfied with a shallow life. People who want the full, deep, long, meaningful one. Subscribe now. Then let us keep going. Let us travel next to Sardinia, Italy. Sardinia is a rugged, sun-drenched island in the Mediterranean where the men, not just the women, but the men specifically, live in extraordinary numbers past 100 years of age. And what the researchers found there was almost comically simple. They moved not in a gym, not on a treadmill, not by following a complicated fitness plan. The world's longest-lived people do not formally exercise. In blue zones, researchers observed that people were nudged into movement roughly every 20 minutes, natural movement built into the fabric of their daily lives. Walking to the neighbor's house, carrying wood, tending the garden, kneading bread by hand. When researchers spoke with centenarians in the blue zones, not one of them had tried to live to 100. No one said at the age of 50, I am going to get on a longevity diet and live another 50 years. They did not count calories. They did not weigh their protein. They did not restrict their food. In fact, they all celebrated with food. Quiet laugh. They celebrated with food. And yet they lived to 100. Because the celebration was always shared, the table was always full of people, the meal was never eaten alone, staring at a screen, Food, in these cultures, was never just fuel. It was communion, and here is where I need to bring in a truth that is older than any scientific study ever published. The book of Proverbs, written thousands of years before any research team ever set foot on a blue zone island, Proverbs chapter 17, verse 22 declares this: "A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones." A merry heart, that is not just poetry. That is prophecy walking in front of the science by 3,000 years, because the science now confirms it. Joy, genuine, purposeful, connected, grateful joy, has measurable biological impact on the length of your life. The researchers measured it in blood markers, in inflammation levels, in the length of the cellular structures called telomeres, which are directly tied to how fast your body ages. The Bible said it first. Now let us talk about the one thing that almost every long-lived culture on Earth held in common that modern life has quietly and systematically dismantled. Rest, not sleep, though sleep matters enormously. I am talking about intentional, deliberate weekly rest, ceasing from the noise, a returning to stillness. In Indian Ayurveda, sleep is classified as one of the 3 pillars of health alongside food and mindful living, and quality rest within specific nighttime hours is prioritized as a non-negotiable foundation of a long life. And in the Seventh-day Adventist community of Loma Linda, the only blue zone on American soil, the weekly Sabbath was not a religious inconvenience. It was a biological gift, a full day, where the body and the mind stopped producing cortisol at the pace that modern life demands. The God of the Bible understood human biology long before human biology understood itself. In Genesis, the Almighty rested on the 7th day, not because he was tired, but because he was modeling something for every human being who would ever live, that the rhythm of work and rest, of striving and surrendering, is not optional. It is structural, it is written into the design of life itself. And when we ignore that rhythm, when we push through every weekend, when we never unplug, when we treat rest as laziness and busyness as virtue, we are not being productive. We are slowly shortening the very life we think we are building. Let me bring you now to a 2024 Swedish study published in a journal called Science. The researchers tracked individuals born between 1912 and 1922, following their health records across 50 years. What they found was startling in its simplicity. Centenarians, people who reached 100, had a lower lifetime risk for stroke, heart attack, and many forms of cancer. But here is the part that reframes everything. This was not because they survived more diseases. It was because they delayed or sidestepped disease almost entirely. People who live longest tend to be the healthiest. Read that again. The people who live longest tend to be the healthiest, not the ones who fought the most battles with their bodies, not the ones with the most surgeries or the thickest medical files. The ones who accumulated disease, the SLOWEST, the ones whose inflammation stayed low, whose stress stayed managed, whose lives were rooted in purpose, community, movement, and faith. Almost a whisper, that is the rule. That is the one rule, not a diet, not a pill, not a protocol. A life structured around meaning, around people, around rest, around moving your body the way it was made to move, around eating food that looks like it came from the ground rather than a factory, around belonging to something beyond yourself, around God, because every single blue zone community on Earth, every one of them, carried some form of spiritual or faith practice. Whether it was the Seventh-day Adventists of Loma Linda, or the deeply spiritual people of Nicoya, or the contemplative village culture of Sardinia, belonging to a faith-based community was one of the common denominators across every long-lived population researchers studied. This is not coincidence. The longest-lived people on Earth did not stumble into purpose. They were anchored in it. And the Word of God speaks to this with a clarity that no research paper can improve upon. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Psalm 91:16. Not a life that merely lasts, a life that is satisfied, full, rich, deep. That is the promise. And it is available to every single person watching this right now. So let me give you something practical before we close. The researchers who studied the longest-lived people on Earth distilled what they found into principles anyone can begin applying today, not next year, not after the next health scare. Today, one, find your reason to get up. Your ikigai, your purpose. If you have lost it, or if you never found it, ask God to show it to you. Because a life without purpose is not just an empty life. It is, according to the research, a shorter one. To choose your people carefully. Surround yourself with those who make you laugh, who check on you, who will walk across the village when you do not show up. The quality of your close relationships is more powerful than any medication. The way you were made to move, not as punishment, not as performance, just daily, gentle, natural movement woven into the fabric of your life. Walk, garden, cook from scratch. Use your hands, eat with gratitude, and stop before you are completely full. The Okinawans called it hara hachibu, eating until 80% full. They said it before every meal as a reminder that the body is a gift, not a rubbish bin. 5. Rest, weekly, fully, without guilt. 6. Believe in something larger than yourself. The data from decades of research on the longest-lived people on Earth supports what the ancient scriptures declared first. Faith extends life. Community heals. Purpose sustains. There is a man in Okinawa who was interviewed by a researcher and asked, at the age of 104, what his ikigai was. What was his reason to live? He smiled. He said, my great-great-grandchildren, not his resume, not his achievements, not the recognition he had received. His people, the ones he loved, the ones who needed him. And in that single answer, he summarized everything that science has spent decades and millions of dollars trying to confirm. We were not made to accumulate. We were made to belong. We were not made to endure. We were made to flourish. The scriptures knew it. The centenarians lived it. And now, today, the research has finally caught up. The one rule for a long life is not a rule at all, really. It is a return, a coming home to the way we were always designed to live, with purpose, with people, with rest, with faith, with the merry heart that Proverbs said 3,000 years ago does good like medicine. May you live long. May you live full. And may every year of your life be one that you were genuinely glad to have. If this landed in your heart today, if something in this message spoke to a question you have been carrying, I want to ask you, warmly and sincerely, subscribe to Legacy Lantern. Share this with someone you love, someone who needs to hear that it is not too late, that the choices they make today still matter, that life, even now, can be more than they imagined. We are building something here together. A community of people who believe that wisdom is worth chasing, that truth is worth sitting with, and that a life well lived is the greatest legacy any of us can leave.